Imagine for a moment that I decided to change the format of my channel completely and rename it to All Redheads Are Evil. Okay? And in that channel, on that channel, I spent every single day making multiple videos detailing certain redheads in the present time or in history. And every single video was showing you evil things redheads were doing. Murders, stealing, rape, anything you could imagine, but only focusing on redheads. And I pounded on that and pounded on that and pounded on that and genuinely seemed to believe it even throughout my videos. Imagine I did that. Now imagine that every single mainstream media organization came across my channel and picked it up as truth, as reality, and started running those stories all over the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What do you think might happen? I think what would happen is people would see this stuff and over the course of time begin to believe that all redheads are evil. You could do the same thing. Say another example would be all vehicles are death traps, and focus an entire channel on nothing but horrific accidents constantly over and over and over again to get people to the point where they're like, I don't think I want to drive anymore. Propaganda is so easy to perpetrate on an unsuspecting society. And the problem we have in society is that the vast majority of people don't want to believe that they're being lied to by their governments or by their media. They don't want to believe it. Not on the real big stuff. Most people know government people lie, but they don't want to believe it on the real big stuff. And they take advantage of that because our minds are very impressionable. Our minds are prone to believe what we hear repeatedly over and over and over again. We'll eventually begin to believe it unless we understand that we're being lied to. And climate change propaganda that they've been throwing at us now basically for my entire lifetime. I'm 46 and I can go all the way back to grade school in the 80s and being told that by the year 2000 the ozone layer would be gone, or the oceans would be overcoming Florida and California, and Miami would be underwater, or Los Angeles, etc. And the climate change agenda has always existed in my lifetime. They just constantly keep changing the name of it or the symptoms of it. It used to be global warming. Then it became climate change. Now it's global boiling. They're trying to sell that as global boiling. And they do it the same way that I would do if I wanted to convince you all redheads are evil, which I don't believe that, by the way. If you're a redhead, I don't think that. I'm just using that as an example. They take advantage of that, and they've been doing it, pounding it down our throats forever and making it more and more severe. And it's a multifaceted attack. Climate change is a real thing. The climate changes with the seasons. The climate changes with the seasons. And over the course of hundreds and thousands of years, yes, there are temperature changes and things like that happen. That's just how the world has always worked. But what they've done, what the media has done through the direction of the rulers of the world, is to take everyday average things that are completely normal, like hot weather in the summer, and weaponize it into a way to lie to you, ultimately to control you, to keep you from wanting to travel, or, thinking that you shouldn't travel, and ultimately that you are a virus on the earth, and that you, by being alive, are destroying the earth. And there's nothing that could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth than that. But so many people buy into it. I even see evangelical preachers, well-known evangelical preachers, that perpetrate the lie of climate change. And they've done it this year so much with these fires. As though a fire, see, there's so many things scientifically that just are so far off with what they want us to believe, that climate change is happening due to our emissions. Fires, I did some research this morning. It's important stuff to understand. A typical fire, a standard forest fire, is going to burn anywhere from 1100 degrees to 1800 degrees. Now, When it's 110 degrees out, it's like they want us to believe that it just being hot outside is sparking these fires. 110 degrees is not going to spark a fire which burns minimally at 1,100 degrees, and I'm talking in Fahrenheit. Obviously, it doesn't work that way, but they keep saying it over and over again, and people begin to believe it. Oh, it's hot. That's why there's fires everywhere. Nope. Nope. The insanity of it is completely ridiculous from a common sense perspective. But that's just one way they go with climate change, convincing us that the hot weather is sparking all of these fires. You know, you look at all the bad weather, you know, the tornadoes that they constantly are harping on now, that happen every year. You look at the hurricanes that they blame on global warming, global, you know, global boiling, or whatever they want to call it now. And so not only do we deal with normal weather that they've now tried to weaponize by convincing us that it's not normal for there to be normal bad weather and hot weather in the summer, but on top of that, if you don't believe that governments know exactly how to manipulate the weather these days, you're crazy. Of course they do. And they use so many multifaceted ways of doing it. One of the ways they do it is through cloud seeding. And cloud seeding is something that's been done for decades. Even in the Vietnam War, why were there all those torrential rainfalls that never ended? It's been proven and shown it was our government doing cloud seeding for this constant rain to bring the enemy, the Vietnamese that we were fighting against for no reason, to bring them out, you know, to draw them out. What was the entire purpose of that type of cloud seeding? It's been done forever, and it's not a hard thing. If you look into cloud seeding, even mainstream media has covered in the past how this is a very real thing, how governments can cause rain, can cause weather to happen. And then we take HARP. We take HARP, H-A-R-P, which is in Alaska. And HARP stands for High Frequency Active Aural Research Program. Aural, A-U-R-O-A-L. High Frequency Active Aural Research Program. Frequency. What HARP does is it uses radio waves between 3 and 30 megahertz to heat the I wrote this down so I didn't get it wrong, ionospheric areas of the atmosphere, the highest areas of the atmosphere. They're heating the highest areas of the atmosphere with these 3 to 30 megahertz radio waves. Why would they want to do that? What purpose does that serve? Other than to manipulate weather. If you've ever seen what frequency does to water, which is in the air, in the highest areas of our atmosphere, it's very simple to see how they can create these huge storms by manipulating water in the air with frequency. And then they're putting in the sky through the chemtrailing barium, strontium, aluminum, all these heavy metals that further increase the effects whenever they want. And then blame it on you and I. Blame it on you and I for living. I've even seen recently, and this is insanity, on how they're further trying to create more types of issues with our environment. In all of these different areas of the world, they're chopping down huge forests and burying the trees as though that's supposed to help climate change. And in reality, like, who in this world doesn't understand that trees and plants take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen? Unbelievable. Everybody knows that, right? But they're saying they're doing it as a way to fight climate change. So through HARP and through cloud seeding and through the heavy metals they're putting in the skies, and God knows what else is in those chemtrails, they are easily able to manipulate weather. Easily. They're even talking now, Bill Gates wants to block out the sun as much as he can with these chemtrails. They don't hide it anymore. Chemtrails used to be a conspiracy theory. And you know, conspiracy theory, if you don't know this, that term was weaponized by the CIA right after the JFK assassination to make anybody who questioned the official narrative sound like they're crazy. And it worked. And it worked better than I think they thought it would, even, because every human being has something called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is simply when you're presented with new and uncomfortable information, and it questions your entire reality of what you've always been taught or learned or think you know, and you get angry. You get angry. It happens to everybody. Oh my goodness, there goes an eagle. I love when eagles fly by as I'm recording. It's so cool. I wish it would fly behind me. Maybe it will. But the cognitive dissonance is why the term conspiracy theorist worked, because people would hear and they wouldn't want to believe that their rulers, the people they've elected, so they think, would ever do something like that, for example, like the JFK assassination. But it was weaponized in such a perfect way, and they still use it for anybody who points out obvious facts. And at this point, even the term conspiracy theorist makes me laugh, because the conspiracy theorist world are the only ones talking about reality. True reality. The true conspiracy theorists are the mainstream people, are your politicians. And we have to understand all of this to understand, as we navigate the end of the age, as we are, and as my channel talks about in such detail, we have to pay attention to the lies that are being told to the vast majority of the world, and that are being believed by the vast majority of the world, the vast majority of the world. We're so in our little bubbles and surround ourselves with people who believe what we believe because we have cognitive dissonance as well. I'll tell you, the truthers who think they know it all and are presented with the message that God has given me to share throughout my channel, they have just as much cognitive dissonance as some random person on the street that believes Nora O'Donnell and ABC News and thinks that's real, and you tell them a little something like I'm telling you right now. They have the same amount of cognitive dissonance. I have been affected by cognitive dissonance at times when I've learned things that I didn't want to believe were true. And so that's used against us to keep us under control. And that is always the goal of the rulers of the world, to control you, to keep you subservient, to keep you relying and believing in what they're saying. And that's only going to get worse and worse and worse in the last 2 years, until the end of this age, when the beast himself in September of 2025 has his reign set up on earth, as I talk about so much on this channel. If you don't know what I'm talking about, dig into my channel, look at some titles, find some of my videos that appeal to you, and as the Spirit leads you to start watching what I'm talking about. But it's all about control. It's not only about mind control, it's also about physical control, wherein they're in very short order are not going to want us to be traveling anymore at all. And they can at this point implement lockdowns on any number of things and a combination of things, and they will be. The initial lockdown that's coming, as I just talked about 2 days ago in the video I put up, will be blamed again on a new pandemic. However, they also have a climate change lockdown to fall back on. And as the world war erupts, a war lockdown to fall back on. And so travel, they're going to make impossible as they can. That's just how it's going to work. And the climate change agenda is a huge part of that we need to see through. And people have always said, really since COVID started, when people really started to realize, more and more people started to realize that the media was constantly lying to you. And people would always say, well, just shut it off. Don't pay attention to it. I say, no, that's not right. We have to pay attention to it. So we know what's being spewed to the masses. And once you realize every single word coming out of their faces when their face is open is a lie, every single word is a lie. And since when does world news bring on meteorologists all the time? Only because they have an agenda to push. Just like I could have an agenda to push if I wanted to convince you that all redheads are evil. And so with these fires, man, we have to talk. I haven't even touched on the Maui situation at all, because so many other people are. And to think that the Maui situation and that fire that happened there was a random forest fire is absolute pure insanity. It was a clear attack by somebody. And I'm going to prove that to you. So if you've seen all the footage, which I don't know at this point who hasn't, of the devastation in Maui, you'll see all of these vehicles just melted, just burned out completely. And so I started to think to myself, well, let's do some simple research here, right? What temperature, first of all, what is the main material of a vehicle? Well, obviously it's steel, right? The chassis and everything, it's steel. And so I wanted to know, what temperature does it require to melt steel? And what I learned is steel begins to melt at about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, up to and about 2,785 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the base of where it begins to melt, okay? A fire that's red, a red fire is between 1,100 and 1,800 degrees. Okay, nowhere near enough. And that's a standard fire. Some fires, forest fires, can get as just random forest fires, true forest fires, can get as hot as 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be an orange or yellow flame, which is what they showed us in these fires, orange and yellow flames. Still nowhere near the ability to melt steel. So what would melt steel? Well, a white or a blue flame would melt steel, anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 degrees for a blue flame. What causes a blue flame? And this is what I wanted to know. How could a random forest fire possibly burn at 3,000 degrees in a blue flame? Which, again, like I said, they didn't show us a blue flame. They showed us orange and yellow flames in the footage that we actually got to see. Here's how you get a blue flame. And I'm going to struggle pronouncing this word, but I'm going to try. There's a compound of carbon and nitrogen known as C4N2. And it's called dicyanoacetylene, dicyanoacetylene. Again, it's a compound of carbon and nitrogen, and this can allow a fire to burn blue and white, or be hot enough to actually melt out steel. And so that compound has to be added to fire. To get that hot. So that in and of itself tells you we were lied to about that. And anybody who can't see that clearly, and then they blame it on climate change, just to further double down on the nonsense that people just lap up as reality. Even these Christian evangelists, names you would recognize. There's one over there right now walking all around in the devastation and showing all the devastation, and he's calling it a forest fire. And I called them out on Twitter. I'm like, at what point can we get real with ourselves and realize this was not a forest fire? And there's been so many other strange things that had happened there, where media has been kept out. Media has been kept out of the true devastation, and people that were trying to flee were being barricaded in. And the only people that were able to survive just said, screw you, barricade people, and it just went around it. We're under such an immense psychological and physical attack from the rulers of the world to beat us down to the point of total subservience to them and to give up. Now, as I always say, nothing can stop any of this. Nothing can stop what's coming. It's all going to happen, but we need to see it for what it is and call it out for what it is strategically when it makes sense, to show people what's really going on in the world right now, and that we are in the end of the age since Christ was crucified, died, resurrected to the right hand of the Father 2,000 years ago. This is it, man. This is it. And Lucifer himself runs, as I always say, every single system of this earth. We're in the 7 seals of God's judgment, as I constantly talk about, and it has to happen as it's written. It's starting in Revelation 6. We're in seal 2, the fiery red horse of war, moving forward into 3, 4, and 5 right now. It happens because basically God gave over the world to Lucifer a long, long time ago, and this is his time to make as much noise on the earth as he can, and God is allowing it. And God's only goal right now is judgment of this earth and to pluck his people out of it, not by a rapture, but by what Revelation 24, 5, and 6 teaches us. I want you to share this with somebody who believes climate change is real. I want you to share this so that they can maybe have a little bit of an open eye to realize that climate change is such a constructed thing. And as I said in the beginning of the video, has been for decades. I don't know if they were talking about it in the 50s or 60s, but I know for sure in the late 70s, early 80s, when I started to become a person, it's always been there. We've been set up forever, for our entire lives, to prepare us for this. And it's all being engineered. It's all being engineered. And then doubled down with propaganda. Yes, summer is hot. Yeah, you see the propaganda on the news where they're like 150 million people in America are under heat advisory. Everyone's scorching. It's a, what do they call it again? Global boiling. Global boiling. Shut up. Shut up, man. Shut up. It's laughable. It's laughable that we would believe this. But again, the human mind is so impressionable that if the same thing is repeated over and over and over again, you can get the average person to believe anything. And truthfully, that's why God in my videos has me repeat myself a lot, because this is the message of the age. This is the message he wants out there to people at the end of the age to really see through the lies and finally come to him. And in seeing through the lies, and then in seeing how it totally is in line with prophecy and the revelation of Jesus Christ and how everything is perfectly in line, it allows the average person to say, wait a minute, if this is all true, God must be real. And then begin seeking him and ultimately serving him. So if you're stuck on the idea of climate change, or that you should buy an electric vehicle. By the way, with electric vehicles, another level of insanity. How do you charge your electric vehicle? With electricity. The vast majority of electricity comes from burning fossil fuels. Another level of insanity. It's just a way of keeping you pinned in from being able to travel freely, making you a slave, a serf. Is what that does. It's also sick. We live in a very sick world. Very, very sick world that is totally aligned against us. Totally aligned against everything that's important to us. And for most people, what's important to us is we just want to be left alone and live our lives. But the age we were born in does not allow for that. It simply doesn't. We can't. It will find you. The agenda at some point, with all the many-pronged attacks that we're under, it will find you. The agenda will find you eventually. And that's when we have to have the resolve to stand firm in Christ and say, I will not comply even unto death. Revelation 24, 5, and 6. That's where all this is heading. So, again, share this with somebody who thinks climate change is real. And and have a conversation with them about it, not in a judgmental way, but just, can you refute what that Travis guy is saying and what he was telling you with this compound that must have been added to the fire in Maui to melt steel? Meanwhile, trees right next to the melted out cars, trees were still standing, palm trees. Pay attention to detail, man, but share it. And as you do, have an open mind to answer questions. Even if to you those questions sound really rudimentary, you have to remember we were all once there too. We were all in a place where we believed what the world told us and had no idea the true age that we were actually living in.